Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. This is the first in a series that I'm calling the Cult Leaders Toolbox. We'll be exploring different tactics that many cults tend to use to captivate their followers and, in many cases, to hold them captive. So today's episode 1, is establishing credibility. So I want to tell you a little story. It's story time here at Coffee, Cults, and Crafts. And this story is about a guy his name was Jim. He was born in Indiana in 1931 to a couple that had Baptist and Quaker roots. And little Jimmy, he always wanted to be a preacher. He would preach to his pets, he would preach to his neighbors, he would preach to his friends, his high school class. I'm sure they loved that. And when he graduated from high school, he decided to go into the ministry, but he wasn't too sure what path he wanted to take. So he explored all different congregations and different denominations of Christianity, and he found Pentecostalism. And he felt like he had found his calling, that he had been anointed by the Holy Spirit. He had special revelations that he claimed were directly from God, and many of them were received widely, and a lot of them sounded really good in the beginning, and were pretty good in the beginning. And he founded a church. It was called Wings of Deliverance, and he was also very active in the community as a civil rights activist. He was a champion of anti-segregation and helped the homeless. And he was named the director of the Indianapolis Human Rights Commission. And he helped to desegregate movie theaters and all kinds of places. And his church was growing strong. So in 1965, he moved his congregation to California and eventually settled in San Francisco, where his church again was growing by leaps and bounds. He got into politics and was shaking hands with lots of politicians and doing deals, and he landed a pretty prestigious position in the city as the chairman of the Housing Commission Authority. So he was basically the biggest landlord in San Francisco. And over this time, again, his church was growing. There were things going on that definitely shouldn't have been going on, but things were being overlooked. And some of the accolades that he received in the 60s and 70s were, besides the housing authority position in the 60s, he had been ordained a minister of the Independent Assemblies of God. In 1976, he was named the Humanitarian of the Year by the Los Angeles Herald. In 1977, he was awarded the Martin Luther King Jr. Humanitarian Award by a very prominent pastor, Reverend Cecil Williams. He was named this Jim guy I'm talking about, right? He was named one of the top 100 pastors by Religion in America Life magazine, or Religion in American Life magazine. He had many powerful connections and friends. He was even defended by Jane Fonda on many occasions, and his church was really growing. But I should mention something about this church of his, that pretty early on he had actually changed the name of the church from the Wings of Deliverance to the People's Temple. So, yes, we're talking about none other than Jim Jones. And I'm sure most of you watching this know the rest of the story. He purchased land in Guyana, named it Jonestown, and one thing led to another. Horrific things occurred, and 918 people lost their lives in Guyana in the jungle. So, yeah, it's heavy, I know, um, and a lot of people I've heard say things like they're very fascinated in cults. They say, "How could they? How could people? How could people?" Well, if you look at all of the accolades and the credibility that Jim Jones had established in the 50s through the 70s, you kinda get a little glimpse of how could they. And once the people were in and they were in South America, away from their families, they really got to the point where they didn't have a choice. So, I just wanna I know this is an extreme example, but it's also a good example of how a charismatic leader can very slowly but surely establish credibility, establish trust, and just draw people in. And sometimes it takes a while for people to realize, and sometimes some don't realize that they've been hoodwinked. So I won't go into all of the rest of the story, but I just wanted to lay the groundwork today of some of the things that are used by cult leaders. There's different types of cults, there's different types of tactics, but there are so many similarities that I wanted to highlight this one today. And I would love for you to like this video, to comment, to engage in discussion about it. I think I'm pretty excited, even though this is a very dark topic. I really want to be just one of the tiny, tiny voices that are getting the word out about coercive control and about cult abuse. And I hope you'll watch and like and subscribe. And thank you so much for listening. Until next time.